Okay, let's talk about The Mummy. The Mummy 1999 is a perfect movie. It's the best movie ever. No, I'm not taking questions. End. No, wait, please don't click off the video. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. What's actually going to happen in this video is I'm going to do a brief recap of the movie's plot based on the assumption that you've already seen it and want to gush about it like I do. We're going to look at the incredibly sexy cast and how it was just a beautiful bisexual dream. Also, my opinion on why Evie is the hero that absolutely everybody needs. A tangent story about my experience with the Mummy roller coaster at Universal Studios Florida. And finally, a very, very quick touch on the sequels. I will not be discussing the Dark Universe. That movie doesn't exist to me. We are talking about The Mummy, 1999. The only The Mummy. No, but seriously, let's talk about the movie. It's probably my favorite action adventure movie of all time. The fun story behind this very special Blu-ray is that back in like 2011, 2012, there was a store that used to be dedicated to selling CDs and DVDs, and I think there may be a couple of those left, but they used to be more common. Anyways, they did a poll for people to vote on what movies they wanted to have re-released on Blu-ray in these super special comic book art covers. And obviously, when I saw that The Mummy was one of them, I was like, "Ooh, I'm absolutely buying that." And I hunted it down. And nobody else has seen these also. Like, I don't know if they were run in any other stores, but it is very, very precious to me. It's like a steel box. It's like shimmery effect on the front. I'm not sure if I've ever actually used the DVD. I just really like the collector's item. It looks nice on my shelf. Now, to be fair to the Dark Universe, this movie was actually originally pulled from the concept of the old Universal monsters. You know, the classic Creature from the Black Lagoon, Werewolf, Invisible Man. And while this one was obviously flavored to be in the style of 90s action adventure, I think it actually managed to do so much with such a simple concept. When you have the cast and crew 100% committed to something like this, it makes the best movie ever. Before I put this down and talk about the plot of the movie, I do just want to reiterate that I'm going to be talking about the movie with the understanding that you've already seen it. I won't be going into as much detail about the plot as I did with something like Constantine. And also, if you haven't seen the movie, I suggest that you stop and go watch it right now and then please come back because I'm not exaggerating. This is just fun and it's good and it's oh, there aren't enough words for me to articulate it, and I'm an author, so that should tell you. So, starting off the movie in 1290 BC, we are already with two extraordinarily sexy characters who are almost all the way naked, being Imhotep and Anck. And look, I know that it kind of sucks that the story starts with like an affair, but also when you consider that the marriage to Pharaoh may not have been entirely consensual, it's, okay. And the reason I say this is because I just happen to think that Nook is a total badass. Seriously, if I had the body, I would do that cosplay in a second with all the body paint. Like, well, she is just, and I mean, it's sad, right, that she ends up, with the dagger and everything. But her last words are, "My body is no longer his temple." So it's like, I don't know. I just really love it. I think she's a total badass. And I mean, even later in the movie, when she's like a creepy mummy, she's still pretty cool. She's like fighting and stuff. She is no damsel in distress, even when she's dead. Let's maybe not talk too much about the beginning with the whole live mummification thing because honestly that just really creeps me out. Like it's just buried alive is one of my worst nightmares. I really can't handle that kind of horror. So I mean, as much as I think that this movie is the perfect blend of horror and action, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. It is just like I'm not going to talk about it right now. Oh, cool. Of course, the whole opening narration is done by Ardith, who we love and who we actually don't meet until a little bit later. But the point is that the Magi are like the mystical people who are charged with protecting the tomb to make sure that Imhotep never comes back and brings all the plagues with him. Thought that that was a really, really clever use of the whole 10 plagues of Egypt thing without using like the Christianity part. Like it's just a really like, somebody who's been tormented so badly that they bring plagues if they're ever resurrected. That's cool, right? We get our first time jump to 1923 AD, where we meet a battalion of soldiers, and we're not really sure why they're there at this point. And we also meet our amazing secondary protagonist, Rick O'Connell, played by the dreamy Brendan Fraser. Also, I just have to say that for anyone else out there who's a fan of Firefly, the show, I couldn't help but notice that Brendan Fraser is dressed almost exactly like Mal Reynolds in this opening scene. Obviously, he changes a little bit later, and we'll get into that. But right in this scene, in this opener, maybe I'll try to put a picture. Will I put a picture here? Or am I too lazy? We'll see, I guess. In spite of O'Connell's battalion being defeated by the men in black, they all end up riding away because they're afraid of what's, underneath the sand. Also, something that we English speakers do that is actually kind of sad that I didn't even realize until very, very recently is that the word Sahara is just the Arabic word for desert. Once basically everyone is dead or has run away, it's just O'Connell out in the desert, and we see the Magi watching over the spot where Imhotep is buried, and one of the guys asks Ardith, who did our opening narration, what should they do with him? And Ardith is like, oh, just like let the desert kill him. That's what's in the subtitles. But they're speaking Arabic and the word Sahara is used. And I'm like, oh, that's right. In English, we say desert, desert. And I mean, I know we do this for a lot of things. Chai tea is another one. Naan bread is another one. ATM machine is just like not quite the same, but it still bothers me. Or PIN number, that's another one. Anyways, the point is, we really should not say Sahara Desert, just say Sahara. Now we cut to our actual protagonist, Evie, who is the coolest librarian in the whole wide world. You think that that isn't saying much, but I promise you it is. Obviously, when we meet Evie, she has that horrible accident where she's on a ladder trying to reach a bookshelf from a different bookshelf. The scene kind of establishes that Evie is a bit of a airheaded klutz in spite of being extremely intelligent because she's on a ladder in the library and she wants to put a book on the opposite shelf, and she, reaches across and causes all the bookshelves to fall down like dominoes. It's a fantastic scene. But it's very relatable also because when I worked retail and I had to go into the back room and there was like shelves on either side, and the back room was so small that it was actually really hard to open the ladder all the way. So instead of opening it like safety standards say, we would just lean it against the wall, right? And then if I needed to be like putting stuff away, I would have stuff in my arms, and instead of like climbing down and then leaning it the other way and climbing back up, I would just turn, and I used to call it ladder ballet because when you reach, you also have to kind of stick your leg out. You can't see what I'm doing, but the point is that it sort of looks like a ballerina. And yeah, it is very against safety standards. Don't do it, kids. Don't try this at home. Open your ladder all the way and have somebody spot you if possible. Also, can I just say that I love the museum curator? Like, he's a really minor character, but he's so funny. He has so many good lines. And the one that he has here, which is, when Ramses destroyed Syria, that was a mistake. You are a catastrophe. I also just want to say that I think it's really cool that in the movie, both Evie and Jonathan are portrayed as having studied archaeology because both their parents were archaeologists. And I feel like even though they're sort of set up as Evie is like the good kid and Jonathan is the bad kid, Jonathan is also portrayed to be very intelligent. Obviously, at the end of the movie, he's reading the hieroglyphics. So I don't know. I guess usually siblings are portrayed in either like very diametric ways, especially siblings of opposite genders. So I thought it was really cool to give them both like they both wanted to chase their parents' dreams and like they did it together. And I don't know, I think that's really wholesome and sweet, and it's just not something you see in a lot of movies. So yeah. We get another great moment with the curator here when he accidentally sets the map to Hymenoptera on fire by holding it too close to the candle to see better. And what I think is great is, and remember, spoilers, if you haven't seen it, go see it. When you know at the end that the curator is also part of the Magi and you watch for it, you can really tell that he is purposefully setting it on fire. He like leans it right into the candle. But when you don't know, it's shot in such a way that your attention is on Evie and Jonathan. And I just, again, like just little visual storytelling bits that foreshadow when you go back. I think this is something that makes a movie like this so rewatchable, is that there's a lot of little things to discover along the way. Speaking of Jonathan and Evie, they have a great exchange right around here where Evie is like, "You lied to me." And Jonathan is like, "I lied to everybody. What makes you so special?" I'm just going to kind of skip forward here over the bit where Evie discovers that, there's a man who has been to Hamunaptra. She meets the merchant whose name is escaping me. I really should have written it down. But he is actually like an English comedian, and this like the portrayal he's doing is obviously very funny. But when I heard his real voice, I was like, whoa. If I hopefully remember, try to put a link in the description, or maybe I'll put a thingy, eye thingy up here somewhere. I don't know. I'll try. Anyway, yeah, so she haggles with him, and we see the like super dirty Rick O'Connell, shaggy hair, beard, all dirty and stuff. And the kiss even seems pretty gross because he's all like dirty and stuff. But oh my God, her reaction to like the cleaned up Rick O'Connell is the most relatable thing ever. The first time I saw this movie, I was around 12 years old, and I was just like, but yeah, I'm gonna talk more about Brendan Fraser's hotness a little bit later, so get ready for that. So they are on the boat on the way to Hymenoptera, and we get another beautiful piece of foreshadowing, which again, I probably didn't catch until like my 10th viewing or something like that. I've seen this movie dozens of times. Okay, it is that good. It's enjoyable every single time. There's a beautiful bit of foreshadowing where one of the guys is like, "Hey, why don't you cut the deck?" And the other guy is like, "Well, I can't cut the deck if I don't have my glasses to see it." And if you've seen the movie, that obviously comes into play later when his glasses are stepped on by Benny and his eyes are then stolen by the mummy. Anyways, I just wanted to say that, like, I think having all these little details really shows a lot of care in, like, the screenwriting and the direction and everything, because it would be really easy. It is really easy to make, like, action movies that are just whatever, they're a dime a dozen, the Fast and Furious type, and you can set Fast and Furious in any time period you like and replace the cars with horses or whatever. But the point is that I really think that this shows just a great amount of thought went into a movie that could otherwise have very easily just been something forgettable. Cut to O'Connell finding Benny on the boat, who is leading the Americans to Hamunaptra, and they have this whole back and forth, frenemies kind of thing. And I know it's so easy to hate Benny, but you kind of love to hate him, right? Like he's just so detestable and such a little slimy greaseball. You just kind of end up loving him. And again, like much like the curator, like he has a more minor role, but he has so many great lines. When O'Connell is about to beat the crap out of him, he's like, "Think of my children." And O'Connell is like, "You don't have any children." And he's like, "Someday I might." Cut to Evie on the boat, and she's getting ready for bed, overthinking the kiss, which, like, again, once you know what Brendan Fraser actually looks like under all the dirt, it kind of recontextualizes that kiss, huh? We get a beautiful piece of slapstick comedy. Okay, like, I'm not one for slapstick. It's largely like for kids thing, and, I think it can be well used, but it can also be overused very, very quickly. And there isn't a lot of like classic slapstick like you see in this movie. And again, you would think that with an action adventure movie, you wouldn't see something quite this slapsticky. We get a scene that is straight up Three Stooges, like the original slapstick monsters. And it is like Evie bends down to get something. When she looks up, there is a man behind her in the mirror. She screams, she grabs a candlestick and sticks it in his eye, and then Jonathan runs in and opens the door, and the door hits him in the ass, and he goes flying into the fire. And it's just very funny, and it's like so well executed, so well shot. It isn't just a lazy comedy bit. You can really tell that there's a lot of thought put into it. So once the characters are off the boat, we get one of everybody's favorite lines, which is the whole like, looks like I've got all the horses. Looks like you're on the wrong side of the river. Which again, like, beautiful Benny and Rick exchange. A lot of the iconography and a lot of the long spanning shots of the desert as they're traveling. And I mentioned this in my Prince of Persia video as well, that a lot of the ideas of Egypt and the Middle East in this time period were all based around the movies Lawrence of Arabia. So our heroes have their cute little race into Hamunaptra, and I also couldn't figure out whether or not the idea of the whole disappearing city is that it's like painted or like built in like such an optical illusion that the heat coming off the sand like hides it in a mirage, or whether there just legitimately is like something supernatural where the city only appears at certain times of day and then you can only go at that time. I'm not actually sure. If you have a better theory or if you understand it better than I do, please tell me in the comments. So I'm just going to say it. Nathan Drake from the Uncharted series. He must just objectively be based on Rick O'Connell, right? I know he's supposed to be male Lara Croft, I think. I didn't actually play the Uncharted games. However, I do know exactly what Nathan Drake looks like on the cover of all of those games, and it is exactly the way Rick O'Connell looks in these scenes. I'm telling you. And again, hopefully, if I'm not too lazy, I'll put pictures here to show you the comparison because I'm not crazy, I swear. And I know that the whole like swashbuckling, dashing hero with the heart of gold isn't like brand new or it wasn't in 1999. And it's not like Rick O'Connell is the first character to ever be like that. I'm just saying that based on like the quippiness and the, you know, kind of sensual energy, but also like somebody that guys like because he's like a guy's guy and stuff. I don't know. I think, if you're asking me, that Nathan Drake is absolutely based on Rick O'Connell. Another really delightful little moment, just another like little character moment, is where the sarcophagus is accidentally revealed by Jonathan playing golf in the tomb, but he's playing golf with a pickaxe as the club. And just again, like it's just some little character details that I think work so well. Just like the mummification scene near the beginning, I really cannot watch the scene where the scarab goes under the skin. Like I know that it in the at least for Jonathan it gets cut out, but again, just body horror is so not my jam. Is that relatable to anybody else? Let me know. So, their first night in Hamunaptra, after pretty much everyone has gone to bed and everything, the Magi attack because they're trying to protect everybody from Imhotep being awoken. And by everybody, I do mean like the world, because I'm pretty sure the idea is that it wouldn't just stop with Egypt, it would be everywhere. So, we want the Magi looking out for us, right? Anyway, the point is that when they attack, Evie grabs a rifle and starts running, and then she just falls over with it. And I'm watching this like that would be me. 100% that would be me. Never give me a gun. I could not be trusted. I'm so clumsy. I'm the clumsiest person. Do you see why I love Evie so much? Yeah, no, never give me a gun. I'm just going to stop here and say that Rachel Weisz is also an amazing comedian. I know I gushed over her in Constantine, where she played a very serious character. But in The Mummy, she plays like this perfect combination of funny and serious, and some of her physical comedy is hilarious, but her drunk acting is just top. What is a place like me doing in a girl like this? But When Evie and Jonathan and O'Connell finally get the sarcophagus open, the mummy like falls out, and honestly, I think it's probably the best jump scare in the whole movie. Um, it's obviously followed by a pretty spooky like nails on the inside of the coffin thing, but the special effects and just the timing and everything is so good. Just saying, as somebody who's not a big fan of jump scares, I'm much more into like psychological horror. I think this is a good one. Another fun little visual thing that I wanted to mention is after Imhotep is awoken and the plagues start to come down. The first one is locusts, and the Egyptologist who is among the Americans is sitting there like clutching the Book of the Dead, just covered in locusts. Like, I don't know what they did for this scene, if it was like a bunch of fake locusts and then like just like a couple real ones jumping around. I don't think it would have been CGI because this was 1999, remember? So the CG that's in there was probably already really expensive. The visual storytelling in this movie about, using the plagues in a way that isn't just like the most straightforward religious interpretation of it. I don't know. I think it's cool. Also, once Imhotep is awake, we get our payoff for the American who we established needs his glasses to see. As they're all running away from the mummy, Benny steps on his glasses, and then he's sort of trapped down in the tomb. And then, Imhotep comes upon him and takes his eyes and tongue, I think, at this point. I mean, eventually he comes for all of it, but I'm pretty sure in the first one it's just his eyes and tongue. Another thing that I think was just a really clever way to work in the use of the sort of original, like 1950s Universal movie monster thing is that the tomb of Imhotep is rigged with all these trapdoors, and it feels very Scooby-Doo, Abbott and Costello. I know those are old things. There's probably something more recent that I'm not getting because I am in the fairy realm, and it's definitely not because I'm older than, yeah. I too would like to fall down a Scooby Doo style trapdoor someday. In another show of brilliance for how well this movie is balanced between horror and action and comedy, we get just a classic horror movie moment where Evie finds the American who was lost in the tomb, and he's facing away from her, and she comes up behind him and she's all like, "Oh, can you help me?" And then he turns around and he has no eyes and no tongue, and it's like pretty freaking scary. I'm sorry, I know I keep repeating myself and saying how awesome I think this movie is, which is sort of why I'm making this whole video, so I hope you don't hate it too much. But it's just like all these little things occur to me, and then as I start talking about them, I get all worked up and excited, and sometimes that means I repeat myself. So thanks for sticking with me. And then, in another fantastic comedy contrast, we have the scene where Rick finds Evie, and then they turn around, and the mummy is right there, and the mummy does his spooky scream at them, and then Brendan Fraser just does the exact same scream right back in the mummy's face. And I just think too many horror movies take themselves too seriously sometimes, and I think that we would be better off if more horror movie protagonists just sometimes screamed back at the villain. Oh my God. And speaking of like character establishment and visual storytelling, the moment where Emotep comes across Benny and he pulls out a giant wad of talismans all tangled together. And as he's being approached, he's pulling out the different necklaces and he's saying a prayer on each one to see if maybe one of these gods will save him. This is possibly the best example of show don't tell I could ever think of. Like, film classes in universities should use this scene as like the example of building a character in a way that is 100% on the audience to interpret, but is interpreted easily and perfectly. It's just such a good scene. And honestly, until the moment it starts raining fire outside, I think that the CGI is kind of incredible for 1999. I know I complimented Constantine a lot for their 2005 CGI. So the fact that the mummy, like the mummy Imhotep itself, is so well done, especially when he's like half formed, because obviously he slowly becomes whole as he takes the organs from each of the Americans. I probably should have looked up what this movie's budget was, but the point is that even though, yes, you can tell that it's 1999 CGI, it's definitely not 2025 CGI. it's still like it holds up. It doesn't take anything away from the movie at all. It's not distracting in any kind of way that like I've seen some bad CGI in other movies. That's like, oh, this just took me out of the entire scene. But that being said, the raining fire scene is not that great. I mean, it's like a really short scene, and it's obviously just establishing the whole plagues thing. But I just, in the interest of fairness, I had to say at least one slightly negative thing, right? At the hotel back in the city, once our heroes have fled Hymenoptera, we see Evie and Rick arguing about if they should go back, if they should stay, and it's a setup again for the cat, which is like coming in just a few scenes. But you see the cat just like wandering around the room, and again, like they could have just easily had the cat come out of nowhere because it's Egypt. Cats are just going to wander around sometimes, but they did a good job of placing it in the room beforehand. When they do finally decide that it's up to them to stop Emotep, they go to the library to see if they can find more information. And we find Ardith again, and he's talking to the curator. And that's, of course, when we find out that the curator is a magi. And that's why he burned the map on purpose, because, they're trying to prevent exactly this from happening. But now it's happened. So who's going to stop it? Obviously, we know who's going to stop it. It's Evie. I mean, it's a little bit Brendan Fraser, but it's mostly Evie. When Imhotep attacks the last American, he gets his life force sucked out, and we only see that in shadow. And I know that showing things in shadow is useful in horror for a whole pile of reasons. It's obviously cheaper because you don't have to shoot any like gore or special effects, and you don't have to really worry about the actors at all. It could just be anyone in shadow. Oh, and it also keeps your movie PG-13 because of the whole like blood and guts thing. But in any case, I think that this was a good use of horror shadows because, Emotep is sort of this half corporeal, half spirit thing at this point. So I think it makes a lot of sense. There's a little moment here that I just have to shout out because I love it. It's like Emotep is almost all the way healed and he still has a big chunk of his jaw that's just like missing. It's just bone, basically. And a scarab like scuttles out of his robe, I think, and it climbs up and it climbs right into his mouth, and then he chomps on it and chews it up. And again, like it's just like a cute little moment. But there's something about a movie that can do so much with a villain in a relatively small amount of time and be in almost no dialogue. Imhotep has a couple lines, obviously, but most of his presence is just as kind of like a screaming monster. And yet, like, he has so much personality. It just really speaks to the screenwriting, I think. I also have to just shout out the triumphant Evie moment when she's reading the script and she realizes that there was a mistranslation that swapped the Anubis and Horus statues for where the books are buried, right? She gets to have her little British scholars. So with our heroes racing against time now, we're, high pressure, high stress. Oh, I almost forgot to mention that back at the hotel, we also get one more bit of foreshadowing where O'Connell waves hi to this old man who's dressed in a military uniform. And it's so that they know each other from the wars, some kind of military thing. I don't think it's based on anything real. But that character, Winston, is going to pay off right now when O'Connell convinces him to fly them back to Hymenoptera, guaranteeing that he'll die in the process. Yes, this character was very, very upset that all of his buddies died, doing heroic stuff in the wars, and he lived. And so all he ever wanted was to go out doing something great in battle. And yeah, he does die, but like he's an old man and he did a nice thing and it was a sacrifice. So we're not too sad about it. And they also have the plane sink into the sand pretty much immediately. So it's like it's not like grim or anything, leaving him out in the desert. Also, just when they're flying, Jonathan and Ardith are like strapped to the wings because there are only two seats. 'Cause it's like one of those old propeller planes. It's just so good. So we're down in the ritual chamber, and Imhotep has Rachel Weisz and Evie all chained up, and he's about to do the ritual to bring back Anuk Cinnamon and put her into Evie's body, or he's going to take Evie's life force and put it into Anux-Nimoon's body. I'm not actually completely sure what the plan was, but it's one of those two things. Also, can I just say that I think that having all the priest mummies was a really nice touch because, like, in the beginning, all of Emotep's priests are trying to like help protect him, and they're also all punished. So having them be reanimated alongside him, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think it was just like another just like little touch that really made it pay off. Connell, Jonathan, and Ardith fighting their way through the mummies to get to Evie, and at a certain point they realize that they're outnumbered and that there's not going to be enough time. And so Ardith is like, I'm going to sacrifice myself this time. Don't worry, he doesn't actually die, very thankfully. But he says he's like going to sacrifice himself, and he gets his moment where he's like, save the girl, kill the creature. And then he goes, Leroy Jenkins, and runs to kill all the mummies. Okay, he doesn't say Leroy Jenkins, but that is absolutely the vibe. I absolutely could not live with myself if I did not compliment the choreography that Brendan Fraser does while he's fighting all the mummies. I can't imagine how much time that took because with all the CG and everything. Plus, again, we get that very classic Three Stooges style slapstick humor where, he pokes one and then he pulls his head off and he hits one behind him. And it's a beautifully choreographed scene. You can watch it again and again. You just keep catching details. And yeah, I mentioned it before, but I just really love that Jonathan can also read the hieroglyphics, like that he can also understand ancient Egyptian, and he's like the one that helps get Evie out of the jam. I mean, like they both help, but his knowledge and his intelligence there. I think it's just a great way to show that you can have passions about something without being a traditionally nerdy person. Like Jonathan is obviously very, very smart and he does know some things that are book learning, but he also knows, street stuff. So I just think that having this complex of a side character is really impressive, especially in a movie that's from 1999 based on literally like the simplest concept. And speaking of Jonathan, I love that in that scene when they're all fighting, that he steals the key, the puzzle box for the book out of Emotep's robes because this whole adventure kind of started because he pickpocketed that key out of somebody else's jacket, right? Robes. I think it's something that's really easy to miss because, like, it's also just on its own, like, a fun little thing because it's like, oh, yeah, Jonathan is a good pickpocket. But that he specifically started all of this trouble by stealing the key, and then he steals the key to save the day ish with alongside Evie and Rick. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? I just think it's cool. As everyone is leaving, we get another really good show don't tell moment. And okay, yes, I know it is the end of the movie, and so like we don't really need more characterization, but I think it goes to show the level of thought and care when a writer goes to the effort of keeping a character fully characterized all the way through to the end, even after the climax. And anyways, that moment is when O'Connell tries to help Benny escape when the tomb is collapsing. Even though Benny has betrayed him like many times, we don't even know how many times because like it's implied that he betrayed him even before the beginning of the movie. Even though he helped the mummy try to destroy the world, O'Connell still tries to save him in the end. And that's just a really great moment. And again, like don't know why they're not teaching this movie in film classes. They really should. And what would be this movie that is the perfect combination of horror and comedy without giving us the two endings? So Benny gives us the perfect horror ending with, all the scarabs that eat flesh and the fire slowly going out and him being trapped in the tomb. That's a great horror movie ending. And then we get Evie and Rick, kissing on the camel, and then, Jonathan tries to kiss a camel and it's a bad breath. I'm a big sucker for a happy ending, especially like a cute romance, especially when there's like a little bit of tension between the leads at the beginning. So yeah, that is The Mummy 1999. And can you now see, or rather, don't you agree with me that this is the perfect movie? Now that we've gushed about the plot, let's gush about the characters and the actors because oh my gosh. So remember how earlier in this video I said that I was like 11 or 12 the first time I saw this movie? Well, maybe this is a TMI, but I swear to you, Brendan Fraser in this movie, like, engaged my puberty. It, like, made me, he made me hit puberty. Like, I was just having a normal day, being a kid, not thinking about boys. Well, like, maybe like a little tiny bit, but like, not really. And then, like, I can remember it so clearly. I was at my grandmother's house and they had, TV movies on, and The Mummy came on and we started watching it. And I had missed the opening bit where, we meet Imhotep and Moon and that whole opening scene with Benny and Rick. So I only saw from like the jail onward. And so it was like I only saw him dirty first. And so then the reveal was like truly a reveal for me as well. And I was like, I swear to you that Brendan Fraser was the first boy I ever really had a crush on. And yeah, so I did talk somewhat about Rachel Weisz in my Constantine video and mentioned how she had just narrowly edged out Keanu Reeves as my crush for that movie because I had just seen her in The Mummy like a couple of years earlier. And that is true. However, at the time when I was, around 12, I couldn't really process my feelings of bisexuality. Like I had them, they were there for sure. And if you're wondering, I actually have a video coming up about bring my bisexuality. So if you're curious about that, then you have that to look forward to. Anyway, I loved Rachel Weisz immediately, but at the time I couldn't process those feelings, so I really focused on Brendan Fraser. Also, this movie is just very sexy. Like, we literally open on a kissing scene where both characters are almost all the way naked. And I know that ancient Egyptian fashion did kind of just work that way, but also, like, come on. Big props to Arnold Vosloo and Patricia Velasquez for being so sexy. And Oded Fair, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, as Ardith Bay, the Magi main character. Wow, he is just also very dreamy. And as much as I do absolutely think we could have a whole discussion about the exotic native stereotype in movie characters, Oded Fehr is a beautiful man. And also, I think that it might be because of him that I really love guys who wear makeup, like the eyeliner, even the face tattoos. They really worked for me. Huh? What was that? Yes, it's absolutely important that we discuss how hot this cast is. Hell, I'm not even going to tell people what tastes to have, okay? Like, I know that they're not exactly Hollywood hot or whatever that means to you, but even John Hannah and Kevin O'Connor, who play Jonathan and Benny respectively, are pretty cute. So, like, seriously, this movie could have just been a really silly action movie with a bunch of super hot people, but it wasn't. It's a movie filled with super hot people that is also an amazing movie. Now, why do I think that Evie is such an important protagonist? Well, there's a few answers, but first of all, can I just say that it would have been incredibly easy for the studios to greenlight a movie that had Rick O'Connell as the main character and Jonathan as like his goofy buddy, and then had some sexy Egyptian woman who was all like in the veil. They sort of do that with Evie in the movie, but luckily it's not too much. Anyways, it would have been really easy to do like a very traditional action movie with male main characters, and they didn't. They decided to make a woman the hero, and she not only kicks butt and is super relatable, but she's also really smart and capable and holds her own. Plus, she's very proud of being studious and nerdy. She takes great pride in being a librarian. And in the case of action movies, I think that we have more space for characters who can defeat the monster with brains instead of brawn. Because even though, yes, Imhotep does turn mortal at the end of the movie and Rick O'Connell is able to stab him, Evie is really the one who is able to figure out that you need to use the book and the incantation and everything. So it just means a lot to me that not only did they make this super cool, badass, capable female hero, but they also didn't make her like a sexy ninja character or even just a sexy archaeologist like Lara Croft is. Like, she's just a regular woman. And yes, Rachel Weisz is way more beautiful than a regular woman, I understand. But for the sake of the character, she she just is. And there's absolutely more space for that because people want to see themselves. And I think a lot of people really saw themselves in Evie. Although, now that I think about it, I feel like the 2000s was kind of a rich time for like boss lady protagonists. So I was right. We had Tomb Raider in 2001, Resident Evil in 2002, Underworld in 2003, Aeon Flux in 2005, and Ultraviolet in 2006. But again, as cool as it was, those characters are all very like skin tight bodysuits and like spinny kicks and everything. And again, it's awesome, but it is just really nice to see a different kind of character. Also, interestingly, even though a lot of those ladies from those movies slash games slash graphic novels are really iconic, I bet if you asked a lot of women in their 30s right now if they would rather be Lara Croft or Evie from The Mummy, I bet you a lot of them would pick Evie. In fact, I bet you most of them would. Alrighty, now let's go on a little tangent about Universal Florida and the Mummy ride experience. So before I get into my story about the ride, I just want to quickly explain, in case you don't know, that basically it's an indoor roller coaster. So I think they call it a dark ride, and there aren't any loops or anything crazy like that. There are sudden starts and stops, and there are a few big dips and there's one false ending. So basically, the story is that you're actually on the set of The Mummy. Like, you're on the set of the movie The Mummy, and then it turns out that Imhotep is real, and now he's like cursing the movie set. So you're going through that. There's big screens in the ride and everything, and you even get to see Brendan Fraser at the end. So that's really exciting. Now, my first time riding the Mummy ride. So here's the thing, is that as a kid, I never really got much opportunities to go to theme parks because we didn't have a lot of money. And so I never got the taste for roller coasters. I was pretty scared of them actually. And so my first time at Universal, I was probably like early 20s. And so, like an adult, I should have been able to handle it. But I didn't know exactly what I was getting into. See, the thing is that I didn't do a lot of research. I like kind of going into things blind and being surprised. I probably should think through those things harder when there's something that scares me. But anyways, the point is that I saw that there was a mummy ride and I was like, I'm going on it. That's like my favorite movie. I have to go on it, obviously. And the person I was with was like, well, like, what if it's a roller coaster? And I was like, well, it's inside. It can't be a roller coaster. And like, even if it is, it can't be like that bad or whatever, right? Like, I'm not a big fan of the loopy loops, but like, if it's inside, it's probably fine, right? It was not fine. And honestly, the only reason it wasn't fine is because I'm a giant baby. But basically, by the time I realized that it was a roller coaster, it was pretty much like when we were at the front of the line, and I didn't want to be that person. So I was like, I can handle it. I can do this. I can totally do this. And it starts slow. Again, it kind of dupes you into thinking that the ride is something that it isn't. And so you are going slowly on this track and everything's fine. And then there's a bunch of special effects and things are popping out of everywhere. And I am terrified. And the way it works is that you actually go backwards on the track. So when you come in, you're like, oh no, the mummy is real. And then the car reverses, but it goes down a different track. But I didn't really realize this. And so I was just like, oh my God, I just have to get through it. I just have to get through it. And it takes you to like a false stop. And I was like, okay, at least it's over. And then it like fires you down this like super dark hallway with a bunch of strobes and a bunch of like these. As much as I hate to admit this, I burst into tears. I was just terrified, and I was bawling. And it's not a super long ride, so when our car arrived at the like platform to get off, poor staff member there saw me just like anime waterworks, like "Ah." And she was like, "Oh my God, are you okay? Did something happen? Are you hurt?" And I was like, "No, I'm just scared." And yeah, that was very, very embarrassing. And I didn't go on any other coasters that trip. But don't you worry. Several years later, I went back to Universal Florida and I rode the Mummy ride and I loved it. And then I rode a bunch of other coasters and loved them too. And now I'm completely a roller coaster convert. So it was just the one kind of bad experience that I probably just made bad by myself by getting worked up over nothing. But yeah, if you do go to Universal Florida, by the way, ride the Velocicoaster. It is the superior coaster. It's the best coaster. It's so good. It's honestly so good, you guys. Just ride the Velocicoaster. Just do it 10 times. Oh, right. So before I leave you, I just wanted to quickly touch on the sequel movies. There were two for this movie. Were direct sequels for this one. We're not counting the Dark Universe, remember? So the truth is that I didn't see the sequel movies. I know that a lot of people really, really want more of something when they like it, but I'm actually kind of the opposite. If I find a movie or a game or something that I think is perfect, I kind of want it to just be perfect. And I actually think that putting too much sequel stuff into a movie or a property, franchise, what have you, can actually detract from the original good stuff about it. I know this isn't always the case, especially not from movies, because you can kind of take movies in isolation sometimes, depending on how they're structured. But, something like take Game of Thrones, for example. I'm not trying to start any fights. Please don't fight with me. I'm sorry. I had to stop watching after season six, and I really only made it through season six because of the sunk cost fallacy that I thought maybe something would happen. And then I watched the entire season, and literally nothing happened the entire season. And then I was like, well, that was a waste of time, and I stopped watching. But I know how bad it got, according to basically everybody. Like, I don't know that there are people out there who thought it was like a great ending or even a good one. Like, I think there are people who like let it pass, but anyways, I'm rambling. The point is that it's hard for me now to want to go back and rewatch Game of Thrones, like season one and season two, which were objectively amazing because I know how bad it gets. So, in the same vein, I don't really want more of something because I feel like it just has too many chances to taint the thing that I love. And maybe that's a childish and immature opinion, and I'm sorry. I did hear that the second movie is actually pretty good, but they recast Rachel Weisz in the third one, and that's just insane to me. Like, it's still Evie, they just recast her. And I understand that people are famous and that they can't make movies, but then, like, they shouldn't have made the movie. Oh my God, I can really talk. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. Seriously, you have no idea how much it means to me to be able to share the things I love with a community and hopefully get opinions back too. I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you want to recommend movies, I already have a couple. I would love to have more because ideas will eventually run out for me. Please take fantastic care of yourselves. Stay happy, stay healthy. You are precious.